Hello, and welcome to today's presentation on prediabetes. I want to thank everyone for coming, and I think you'll find this to be a very exciting and interesting presentation today. Just a couple things to review. We are using the chat feature, which is the little bubble icon that you see, like the little cartoon above the head icon, for any questions that you have during the event today. There is no queue. I know during the information on how to use the platform screen, it had a question and answers button, but we are not using that today. We're just using the chat button. So feel free to put any questions in that. We will, in a few minutes or just a moment, I'll be introducing Dr. Aajay Shah, who is our presenter today. But before that, I want to chat about the other diabetes presentations we have coming up. So today is prediabetes, and then in 2 weeks we start 4 sessions on diabetes, all with different topics. The first one, which is on May 20th, with Dr. Saray Eaton, will be about I'm diagnosed, now what? What do I do? And then all the complications that could potentially happen that you should know about if you have diabetes. And then we move on to nutrition and diabetes. On June 3rd, June 17th, we have a session with 2 behavioral psychologists who will help you make a long-term change. And finally, on July 8th, we have a session on exercise and diabetes. So to get us started, I'm going to introduce our presenter today, Dr. Aajay Shah. Oh, and I do want to say that we will be taking questions at the end, so hang on till the end and we will be able to answer a lot of the questions that you have live on the screen. So now I'm going to introduce Dr. Aajay Shah. Dr. Aajay Shah has been a cardiologist for the last 35 years. He is also a board certified in lifestyle medicine. Dr. Shah has many passions in life, but his true passion is to help people live healthier, happier, and longer. Because of this, Dr. Shah started Healthy Living with Dr. Aajay Shah in late 2019 and continues to help so many people change their lifestyle for the better through exercise and nutrition. He specializes in many healthy living areas, including type 2 diabetes. He is goal-driven to help our type 2 diabetes community finally get off their medications. And I'm sure that anybody who is diabetic or type 2 diabetic loves to hear that you would love to get them off their medications. So thank you so much for presenting today. I'm excited to hear your presentation, and I'll let you take it away.
Great. Thank you, Karen. First of all, I'd like to thank AARP of Michigan to invite me to share my knowledge and expertise. I've been a cardiologist for many, many decades. I got certified into lifestyle medicine just 3 years ago. I realized as a cardiologist that many of the chronic disease, including diabetes, including high blood pressure, including heart failure, including heart disease, including many cancers, actually happens because of our lifestyle. And for that reason, I took a step to get certified into lifestyle medicine. And today's presentation on prediabetes actually is an extension of my commitment to improve lifestyle, to make all my friends, my family, everybody in the community as healthy as we can. And we can start with our presentation today. Today's presentation is prediabetes. So we will talk about what it means, and I called it a raging epidemic. We all are going through right now this corona crisis, corona epidemic. But let me tell you, prediabetes is also raging for last few decades, almost last 20 or 30 years. So let's start with all of you answering a simple question, and that's, do you know that you are pre-diabetic? And if you're not sure, just click that button. But let's answer this question, so at least I know how many of you are pre-diabetic and how many of you are worried about pre-diabetes. So I'll give you a few seconds, so answer that question. So, according to the poll, I'm sure you can see the poll results on your screen, but about 65 to 70% of the people who answered the question are pre-diabetic. And that number actually matches with the national data. If you look at the across the board, if you look at the across the board, there are 50% of Americans who are pre-diabetic. But as we are talking today to people who are above 50, the pre-diabetes is almost 65 to 70%. So our poll results reflect that. And also when people answer that they are not sure whether they are pre-diabetic or not, we will look at the slide, but that's also a true statement. Many of the Americans who are pre-diabetic are not even aware that they are pre-diabetic. So let me tell you first, by this presentation, I'm not going to teach you, I'm not going to show you anything. I'm not going to show you anything which I have any kind of financial interest. I'm not going to try to give you any medical advice. You should talk to your primary care physician so that way you get the best care. Today's presentation is mostly for education purpose, and I'm going to give my best efforts to make sure that we walk out of this presentation with a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, which you can use it from tomorrow. So let's talk about prediabetes. It happens because of insulin resistance, and we will cover insulin resistance in detail over the next few slides. Like I said, across the board, the prediabetes is about 50% of all Americans. And in seniors, people who are typically member of AARP, it's almost 65 to 70%. So it's almost like an epidemic. The reason we worry about prediabetes is because many of the people with prediabetes, almost up to 50%, will become type 2 diabetic in 10 years. And all of you know what type 2 diabetes means. Type 2 diabetes means it's one of the most life-threatening chronic disease. Type 2 diabetes not only leads to high sugar levels, but also many, many complications, including heart complications, including stroke, including memory loss and Alzheimer's disease, including many cancers. We'll talk about that. So prediabetes actually shares the same risk factors as type 2 diabetes. So let's talk about the risk factors which leads to the prediabetes. Number one risk factor, which I want all of you to be aware, is the obesity and overweight. People who are obese, people who are overweight have high risk for developing prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. Also, sedentary lifestyle, people who are not physically active, and we will talk about what it means as we go over through the slides, but not exercising, not moving physically, 30 minutes to 45 minutes per day increases your risk of developing prediabetes. There are many dietary factors which we'll cover. People who eat a lot of processed food, and as you all are aware, as American, we all eat about 65% of our calories from processed food. That means a lot of chips and a lot of soda and many of the processed food. When we eat calorie dense food, which we'll talk about it, that means when we have food which has very high calorie per pound, that also leads to prediabetes. There is some data that people who consume a lot of red meat also are at high risk of developing prediabetes and diabetes. People who eat high saturated fat in their diet also at risk of developing prediabetes. People who eat a lot of simple carb, including sugar, including white bread, including white rice, are also at risk of developing prediabetes and diabetes. People who are having high blood pressure is actually almost like chicken and egg. People who are pre-diabetic, they have higher chance of developing high blood pressure, and people who have a high blood pressure have a higher chance of developing pre-diabetes. People who have high triglyceride level in their blood and low HDL level in their blood also at risk of developing pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes. People who have metabolic syndrome, which we'll talk about it, also at risk of developing pre-diabetes. Certain ethnicities, particularly American Indians, Indian Americans like myself, African Americans, and Hispanics also have very high risk of developing pre-diabetes and diabetes. For the female, a woman who had a history of polycystic ovarian syndrome also has risk of developing pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes. A woman who had diabetes during pregnancy also have high chance of developing pre-diabetes and diabetes in the future. The other thing which I want all of you to be aware that if you have family history, other parents or sibling who have history of prediabetes and diabetes, you are at 3 times high risk of developing diabetes and prediabetes. And also, as we get older, chances of developing prediabetes and diabetes goes higher. There are some emerging risk factors. These risk factors are not 100% proven yet, but in my opinion, they all increase the risk of prediabetes and diabetes. Particularly when we have a lot of sugar sweetened beverage, like a lot of Pepsi, a lot of Coke, a lot of orange juice, a lot of juices, those increase the risk of developing prediabetes and diabetes. People who eat also high fructose corn syrup, particularly in soda, but high fructose corn syrup can be in many of the different food, for example, ketchups and many of the sauces. That also increase your risk of developing prediabetes and diabetes. People who have a short sleep duration, particularly less than 6 hours, are also at risk of developing prediabetes and diabetes. People who work night shift also are at risk of developing prediabetes and diabetes. People who have history of depression, and if they are on treatment for depression, they're also at risk of developing prediabetes and diabetes. People who have low birth weight, particularly below 5 pounds at the time of birth, they are also at risk of developing prediabetes and diabetes. People who had a poor maternal health, if their mom had maternal health which was compromised, they themselves are developing risk of developing prediabetes and diabetes. People whose mom had obesity are also at risk of developing prediabetes and diabetes. If the mom had gestational diabetes, they also are at risk of developing prediabetes and diabetes. There are certain medications, certain drugs which can expose you to developing prediabetes and diabetes, which we'll talk about as we go in this presentation. So how can we diagnose prediabetes? The simplest way of knowing is by your fasting blood sugar. I think all of you, I'm sure you had your blood sugar checked over the last 6 months to 12 months. It's one of the most common tests most doctors order at least every 6 to 12 months. If your fasting blood sugar was between 100 and 125, you have prediabetes. Your A1C is a measure of your average sugar over 90 days. It's a specific test. A lot of doctors are ordering it now to diagnose diabetes and prediabetes. If you know your A1C, and if it is between 5.7 and 6.4, that means you have prediabetes. A lot of the doctors order the 2-hour glucose tolerance test, and if that sugar is between 140 and 199, then you have prediabetes. But the typical test we do is the fasting blood sugar and your A1C. All of you should know your fasting blood sugar and your A1C. If you don't know, make sure you talk to your primary care physician and know those numbers within next few days, next few weeks. Very important to know those numbers, as important as knowing your cholesterol. There's another way of also seeing whether you have prediabetes, because people who have prediabetes many times have we call metabolic syndrome. People who have metabolic syndrome also are at risk of developing diabetes in the future. So if you have 3 out of these 5 criteria which I have listed, one of them is high blood pressure, fasting sugar above 100, triglyceride above 150, HDL, which is a good cholesterol, male below 40, female below 50. And if your waist diameter is above 40 inches for male and above 35 inches for female, and if you have 3 out of the 5 criteria, that means you have metabolic syndrome and you are at risk of developing prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. So make sure you know this 5 criteria, 5 factors. Ask your primary care physician whether you have metabolic syndrome or prediabetes or not. So the reason today's presentation has been prepared for you is because many times prediabetes is without any symptoms. Prediabetes doesn't hurt, like for example, when people have arthritis, the joints hurt. Prediabetes is silent. So it almost becomes your responsibility to know whether you have prediabetes or not, because you will not have any symptoms. And for that reason, many, and actually most Americans are not even aware that they have prediabetes. So I want all of you to ask your primary care physician at the time of the next visit whether you have prediabetes or not. Like in our own survey, as you saw that on the screen, 70% could be pre-diabetic. So I want to make sure that if you're pre-diabetic, you know that you have pre-diabetes. We will cover today how to prevent the pre-diabetes and how to reverse the pre-diabetes. So if you follow along, if you start following the certain recommendations I'm going to make, I can assure you that you can reverse the pre-diabetes and you can prevent the pre-diabetes. So number one risk factor, which I want to cover in detail, is obesity and overweight. You all should know your body mass index, and you can calculate actually body mass index by simple online calculator, which you just plug in your height and weight, and it gives you body mass index. We call it BMI. If your BMI is about 30, that means you have obesity. If your BMI is about 25, that means you are overweight. And both obesity and overweight increases your risk of developing prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. Obesity is almost 43% prevalent in America, 43%. Overweight is 80% in America. So as American, we all are getting overweight and obese. And we will cover next few slides how bad this obesity and overweight has become over the last 30 or 40 years. There's a prediction that obesity will be 50% by 2030. The way I see my patients, my community, my friends, my family members, I think America will be obese 50% by 2027. That's very, very alarming, very, very scary, because obesity brings many diseases, particularly type 2 diabetes. So let's cover obesity over the last 30, 40 years. If you look at this slide, slightly busy slide, and I hope you can see it. In 1985, I came to America in 1986. So I've seen this firsthand with my own eyes. In 1985, obesity in America was less than 10-15% in most states. As you can see, by 2008, so that's about 23 years, it became almost 25 to 30%. And in the next 8 years, by 2016, many states were about 25-30%, and some states were even above 35-40%. And next slide is actually very alarming, very scary slide, that by 2030, some states in America will have obesity almost 55 to 60%. That's very concerning. So one message, if you want to take out from today's seminar, is that try your best to not have overweight or obese category for yourself. That means try to lower your body mass index or BMI below 25. And we will show you how you can do that with some simple measures. But remember, overweight and obesity is the biggest risk factor for developing prediabetes and diabetes. I'm going to ask you to ask simple question. Please go ahead and vote. Please go ahead and answer. If you know your body mass index, 25 to 30, about 30. If you're not sure, that's fine. We will help you how to calculate your body mass index. Go ahead, please. All right, so I can see on the poll results, as you can see it, that below 25 body mass index BMI is about 15%, and that actually is the reflection of what we see in America. In my opinion, BMI below 25, which is a healthy BMI, is about 10 to 15%. People who are not sure about their body mass index, they can actually go on Google and find a calculator, or they can actually download even an app on their both Android phone and on iPhone, a BMI calculator. And I highly recommend to plug in those numbers as you try to lose weight to see if you can lower your BMI below 25. I also feel like BMI 25 is still set very high, and we will talk about it. In my opinion, the BMI of 22 is actually a healthy BMI. So we'll talk about that as we go out in this presentation. My next question to you is that many people think that prediabetes and diabetes happens because of eating a lot of carb. And I want to know firsthand, before I go ahead and show you what the truth is, I want to ask you, how many of you think eating carb causes prediabetes and diabetes? All right. So according to the poll, as you can see, 70% of people think that eating carbohydrate causes the prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. And I'm going to show you that that's actually not the truth. It's eating fat, not the carbohydrate, which causes the prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. I agree, eating simple carb, white rice, white bread, white pasta, increases your risk of developing prediabetes and diabetes. But eating complex carb like vegetables, fruits, and intact grains actually lowers your risk of developing prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. So let me repeat myself. Eating complex carbohydrate, including vegetables, raw and cooked vegetables without oil, eating fruits, raw fruits, and eating intact grains like whole wheat, quinoa, brown rice, millets, all those kind of intact grains actually lowers your risk of developing prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. So again, my take-home message from this poll is that carbohydrate is not your enemy. It's a type of carbohydrate we should be aware, not make the carbohydrate as your enemy. And the reason I want to clarify this thing right off the bat, because right now there is a big craze, big passion, big fad to go on a keto diet. Keto diet is extremely bad, and I'm going to show you, and keto diet is actually going to kill more people and going to cause prediabetes and diabetes on a lot more Americans than ever before. So be aware of the keto diet. So let's cover mechanism of insulin resistance, or why we develop prediabetes and diabetes. The reason prediabetes and diabetes happens is because fatty acids get into the cells because of obesity and overweight, or eating a lot of saturated fat. And when that fatty acid gets in the cell, it doesn't allow the insulin, which is the important hormone. I'm sure all of you are aware of insulin. Insulin is the hormone which helps the blood sugar to get into the cell, where cell can use that blood sugar for energy. But when there are fat in the cell, insulin doesn't work properly on the surface of the cell, and that does not allow the sugar to enter the cell. So that sugar actually stays in the bloodstream, and that's how the blood sugar goes up, and that's how you develop the prediabetes and diabetes. There are some other mechanisms, including developing chronic inflammation, oxidative stress, and condition called beta cell apoptosis, where the cells in your pancreas, the beta cells in your pancreas actually starts dying off, and that leads to less production of insulin, and that leads to prediabetes and diabetes. But the major message, major thing I want you to remember is that it's the fat in the cell which causes the insulin resistance and prediabetes and diabetes. So let me show you how that works. So this is a cartoon of a cell. It can be a muscle cell, it can be a heart cell, it can be brain cell, it can be any cell in the body. And as you can see, the red thing on the cell is the insulin receptor. And insulin is shown as the blue key. And you can see the glucose, which is the purple dot, is floating in the blood. When insulin comes and attaches to its receptor, it facilitates, it allows that glucose to enter the cell. But as you can see, the yellow substance in the cell, those are the fat molecules, fatty acids in the cell itself. And those fatty acids, when a very high amount in the cell, does not allow insulin to properly attach to the insulin receptor, and that makes the blood sugar or the glucose not properly enter the cell. So it's the fat in the cell which makes this insulin not work properly. So again, remember, it's the saturated fat and it's the fat in our diet, it's a fat in our body which makes you insulin resistant. Insulin resistance. So fat again is the one which I want you to remember. If one message I want you to take from this seminar is to say it's the fat in our diet which is going to cause the prediabetes, diabetes, and insulin resistance. So why we worry about insulin resistance? The reason we worry about insulin resistance because it can be associated with type 1 diabetes. Many of the type 1 diabetic are also insulin resistant. Definitely type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance is a major factor. Type 1.5 diabetes, people who are pre-diabetic typically are insulin resistant. Women who are diabetic during pregnancy are insulin resistant. Insulin resistance can lead to coronary disease or heart blockage and heart attack. It can lead to stroke. It can lead to Alzheimer's disease. It can lead to erectile dysfunction. It can lead to blindness. It can lead to renal failure. Again, insulin resistance can lead to many amputations. It can lead to fatty liver disease. It can cause high cholesterol and high triglyceride. Obviously, obesity leads to insulin resistance, and insulin resistance also can lead to obesity. It's chicken and the egg, both can go with each other. Many cancers happen when insulin resistance happens, particularly breast cancer, uterine cancer, prostate cancer. It can lead to neuropathy. It can lead to polycystic ovarian syndrome, which can lead to infertility. People who have insulin resistance are also at high risk of developing high blood pressure. Chronic kidney disease also can happen, and the number one reason for dialysis is type 2 diabetes and pre-diabetes. Next slide is very important. Even though right now blood sugar of 100 is the cutoff for calling it pre-diabetes, there's enough data. And this slide is busy slide, but let me summarize to you for this slide as the title that any blood sugar above 84 is actually detrimental. So even though blood sugar of 100 by the definition is considered pre-diabetes, I want you to try to lower your blood sugar as low as you can, preferably below 84. Below 84. Many of your blood sugar is 90, 95, which is better than 100, but your job is not done until your blood sugar, the fasting blood sugar, is below 84. To give you, I had my blood sugar checked on Monday, just 3 days ago, and my fasting blood sugar is 81. So I will show you how I went through my own transformation over the last 4 or 5 years, and I'll show you how you can do it, your own transformation. Same with A1C. A1C of 4.9 actually is ideal. Even though pre-diabetes definition is 5.7 A1C, but 4.9 is ideal. So I don't want you to settle for mediocre goals. I want you to settle for what are the optimal goals, what are the best goals. So I want you to lower your fasting blood sugar below 84 and your A1C below 4.9. And we can do it with simple lifestyle changes like I have done it for myself. So let's talk about microbiome. Many of you are actually aware of this microbiome. Microbiome is nothing but essentially the bacteria which resides in our body. Bacteria and virus and many other living organisms. The most important microbiome is the microbiome in our gut. in our bowels, in our intestines, small intestine, and in the colon. So microbiome has now proven to be one of the most important factor in our health. Many of the chronic disease happen when we have unhealthy microbiome. And now we know people who eat less fiber in their diet, that means eating less vegetables, less fruits, less plant-based food, less intact grain, they have less fiber in their diet, and they have very unhealthy microbiome. Animal products, including all kind of meat, fish, dairy products like cheese and milk, have zero fiber. So people whose diet is predominantly animal-based product, they have very less fiber and they have very unhealthy microbiome. I want all of you to be aware of this microbiome concept and learn more about it. Watch YouTube video, ask me more questions, and we can do a question and answer session how to improve the microbiome. But my simple message to you is that if you want to improve your microbiome, eat more plant-based food. When you have unhealthy microbiome, many chronic diseases happen, including prediabetes and diabetes. When we eat a lot of high fiber food, particularly soluble fiber, it goes in the colon, and bacteria in the colon digest that fiber and produce we call small chain fatty acid, SCFA, or small chain fatty acid, which are shown to be many benefits, including preventing prediabetes and diabetes. So remember, microbiome and fiber very important in our diet. So let's start talking about how you can prevent and reverse the prediabetes. We know that prediabetes is very common. In our own poll, you saw that 70% of people are pre-diabetic. And I'm sure all of you want to reverse the prediabetes and prevent prediabetes going to a full-blown diabetes. So how can you do that? Number one, if you are overweight or obese, lose weight. And we'll talk about that. So keep your body mass index below 25 and preferably below 22. If I were you, I would lower the BMI below 22. A hard goal, but worth pursuing and worth working hard towards it to get the BMI below 22. If you look at the centenarians, people who live 100 and more, people who live in those blue zones, I'm sure you are aware of blue zones, where people live long and healthy, their typical BMI is 22. So don't settle for BMI of 25, go for BMI below 22. In terms of what you should be eating to prevent and reverse type 2 diabetes and prediabetes is trying to eat more plant-based food. As much as you can, your calories should come from plant-based food, and it should be whole food plant-based, because there are a lot of people, a lot of vegans actually are not very healthy vegans. Eating Oreo cookies is vegan because Oreo cookies are made from plants. At the same time, Oreo cookies are as bad as red meat and as bad as bacon and cheese and processed meat. So I don't want you to settle for becoming vegetarian or vegan. I want you to be whole food plant-based. That means how the food, how the plant are in its natural form, either raw plants, raw fruits, or cooked food, cooked plants in the no oil, just with water or vegetable broth. Many people have question about what should be the macro ratio. Macro means how much carbohydrate, how much protein, and how much fat you should have in your diet. Traditionally, I don't recommend following macro ratio, because if you eat healthy, nature will take care of your macro ratio. But for the people who are curious, people who are very mathematical, and people who are very analytical, my recommendation for ratio is carbohydrate 70%, protein 15%, and fat 15% from the calories. So again, you can see from the macro ratio what I recommend, that carb is not the enemy. Carb is actually your friend. Carb is actually the way you're going to live long and live healthy. It's the type of the carb you're going to eat is going to make you healthy or unhealthy. So type of carb I recommend is whole food plant-based. That means eating raw vegetables, a lot of raw salads, fruits, and vegetables cooked in water, cooked in vegetable broth. So again, carb is not the enemy. The third thing which we covered already is having healthy microbiome. Definitely regular physical activity, exercise is very important. The recommendation is 150 minutes per week, but I recommend at least 45 minutes to 1 hour per day. And that could be as simple as walking, jogging if you can, or running if you can, or biking or elliptical. Definitely including some weight training where you lift weights, either body weight or free weights or machine weights, doing some regular stretches. You can even actually be busy by gardening, uh, cleaning your house, vacuuming your house, doing your dishes, cleaning the windows, going out with a friend. All those things, activity counts as physical activity. You don't have to go to gym every day to be physically active. You can do physical activity without even going to gym in yourself. And that's what I highly recommend, that stay busy all day. Even if you have a desk job, try to get up every hour and walk for 3 to 5 minutes. You should be walking every hour. We know now there is a new way of saying that sitting is new smoking. Obviously, we all know what smoking can lead to, including cancers, including lung disease. And now we think sitting is new smoking. A lot of people sit 8 hours on their desk, and that's actually very, very, very detrimental. Having a good sleep is very important. I highly recommend to sleep at least 7 hours, 7 to 8 hours. If you have a poor sleep, there are a variety of ways of improving your sleep. I have separate videos on YouTube, but I definitely want you to have a good sleep. Stress management is very important. There are some medications which have proven benefit in preventing prediabetes going towards type 2 diabetes. And some of those, ask your primary care physician how you can take those medications to prevent prediabetes going. The diet, because diet is the number one diabetes and reversing prediabetes. So I already covered the cut down on animal products. My recommendation is to not have more than 10% of your calories from animal products. And animal products include all kind of meat, fish, and dairy, including cheese and milk. So if you want to live healthy, if you want to prevent prediabetes, reverse prediabetes, definitely prevent the type 2 diabetes, cut down on the animal products. It's very difficult for some people to cut down on animal products. So I want you to start slowly, maybe have one meal without animal products, maybe move up to 2 meals, and then eventually try to have no more than few meals a week which contains animal products. I'm not recommending, I'm not promoting, I'm not asking you to go vegan. I'm asking you to cut down on animal products. As American, we eat about 30% of our calories from animal products, 30%, and that's just too high. I think 5 to 10% of your calories from animal products is a healthy number, and I all want you to strive for that 5 to 10% calorie from animal products. I want you to eat whole food plant-based diet. I want you to not just go vegan or vegetarian, but try to go whole food plant-based. That means eating plant in natural form, both vegetables, fruits, and intact seeds. I don't want you to eat too much protein. There's a big craze about having high amount of protein in the diet. Protein actually should be the last concern you have. If you eat healthy plant-based food, you will get adequate protein. So maximum 70 grams of protein per day. I already covered definitely no keto diet. Keto diet actually has been proven now to be very detrimental. Carb is very important in diet. I all want you to have 70% carb, whole food, plant-based carb in your diet. Avoid processed food. 65% of American calories come from processed food. So I want you to avoid the processed food as much as possible. Try to have adequate amount of water, because many times when we are thirsty, our brain kind of tricks us and makes us think that we are hungry, and we reach out for food instead of reaching out for a glass of water. So have water on a regular basis. Don't wait until you are thirsty, because when you are thirsty, you may actually eat food because you may think you are hungry, but not the thirsty. So drink regular water every hour or two, and have minimum 64 ounces of water every day. I also highly recommend that if you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to get the body mass index BMI below 22, avoid nuts and seeds. But if your BMI is below 22, you should have regular 1 to 2 ounces of nuts and seeds. And I want you to avoid oil by all means. I'm going to show you what oil can lead to, but avoid the oil as much as possible, and that includes the healthy olive oil. Olive oil is also not necessary in our diet. Uh, so work towards eating a whole food plant-based diet, and I highly recommend that try to eat at home. This one of the good thing happened during this Corona crisis. That a lot of people are eating at home because a lot of restaurants are closed or they're limited capacity. So when you eat at home, try to cook yourself. There are a lot of other services available. Try to eat as many food as you can at home. Learn to cook. Share your cooking with your family, cook together, involve your spouse in cooking, including your kids in cooking, and that will lead to long, long years of healthy life. Definitely avoid animal products, no dairy or minimum dairy, no oil, like I already said. If you go to work, try to take your lunch from home because many of the cafeteria at the workplace, including at the hospital, we don't have healthy food in many of the cafeteria. Uh, so again, try to eat low calorie dense food, and I'll show you what it means in next few slides. I also call it this diet of abundance because, and I call it my own diet because that's how I phrased it, is that we all love to eat. Eating is like a basic, essential hobby most people have, most humans have, is like we love to eat. So it's the type of food we should be eating, not we should be preventing eating. Fasting is very difficult. Fasting is beneficial, but fasting is very difficult. So I want you to eat food, but I want you to eat the right kind of food. And I'll show you how you can eat the right kind of food. Let's cover some simple macro means. When you eat carbohydrate, it gives you 4 calories per gram, and fat gives you 9 calories per gram. So you can clearly see that fat gives you more calories per gram. And even in my opinion, nature also knew that fat is not good for you, and so it put more calories per gram. So you actually typically eat less gram of fat because you will get more calories. So again, I want you to eat more carb and less fat. And carb means whole food, plant-based. All of us need fat. Like I said, 15% of calories should come from fat, but it should be more poly and monosaturated fat, not the saturated fat. And you can get a lot of this thing by just eating 1 tablespoon of flaxseed. So how can you lower fat in your diet? When you eat a lot of animal-based food, it's difficult to lower the fat in diet because a lot of the animal food have very high fat content. You can see that even the leanest beef, leanest beef still has about 30% calorie from fat. So it's very difficult to lower the fat to 10 to 15% in your diet if you have a predominant diet from animal products. As you can see, the broccoli and beans and rice have less than 5% calorie from fat. So if you have your diet predominantly plant-based, whole food plant-based diet, it's much easier to lower the fat content in your diet. And as I showed you in the earlier slides, lowering fat in our diet is number one way of preventing prediabetes and diabetes. So I'm going to ask you a simple question that does anyone know here what calorie density is? And go and answer the question and I'll show you what it means.
Hi, Dr. Shah. Just a quick time check here. We are at 1:52, and so we only have about 10 minutes left, and then we want to do some questions. So I know.
Yeah, I'll speed it up.
Okay, excellent. Thanks.
So again, you can clearly see everybody answered this question in the right way. So that's a great thing. And I'm going to show you what it means over the next few slides. So this slide is a very simple slide, very busy slide, but essentially it shows that when we eat the whole food plant-based diet, it gives you less than 500 calories per pound. When we eat a lot of processed food, when we eat a lot of bread, it gives you 500 to 1,000 calories. And when we eat a lot of the animal products, when we eat a lot of the cheese and candy and bacon and nuts and seeds, it gives you 2,000 to 3,000 calories per pound. Our stomach has a capacity of about 1 pound, and if we eat 3 meals a day, we eat about 3 pounds per day. Most of us eat about 3 pounds per day. If you eat 500 calorie per pound diet, which is mostly in the green thing you can see, then you'll be eating probably 1,500 to 2,000 calorie per day. So more you eat from this green list, then you'll be eating the right kind of food instead of eating from the red list. And next slide is very simple slide. Essentially says that when we fill up our stomach with plants and vegetables and fruits from 500 calories, it will give us satiety, it will fill us up, and actually it will make sure that we don't look out for more food. On the other hand, if we eat meat or if we eat potatoes or cheese, our stomach will not be full and we will reach out for more food, we will eat more calories, and we will be obese and overweight. So if you eat fruits and vegetables, you will be feeling full and you'll be automatically eating less calories. So reach out for more fruits and vegetables. So again, there are two videos I want you to watch. This will be in our presentation. One video, which is one of the most excellent video you can ever watch, is by Chef Aajay on calorie density. It's on YouTube, or Forks Over Knives. There is a concept of intermittent fasting, essentially eating within 8 to 12 hours. There are a lot of benefits of intermittent fasting, including weight loss, living long, prevention of prediabetes and diabetes, cancer prevention, improving sleep, and many more benefits. So try to eat within 8 to 12-hour window. So how to eat at the restaurant? Very important. Eat salads, eat low-fat dish, pick vegan options as much as possible, eat less bread, drink water or low-calorie drinks, avoid beers and many of the high-calorie, high-sugary drinks. Try to eat low-calorie dessert if it's available, or just ask for fruits. Shared dishes, most dishes at restaurants are almost meant for 2 or 3 people. So try to share this, and never be afraid, never be ashamed to take half of your food home and eat it next day. Obviously, eat at home as much as possible, but if you go out to a restaurant, if you try to socialize, try to follow these principles. Same thing with eating at the parties. Try to eat oil-free vegetables, drink water. You can take food from home. Most hosts actually don't mind you bring your own healthy food and share with the people, and try to eat fruits for the desserts. If you like to have few drinks, try to limit drinks to one drink 1 to 2 times a week. Definitely, we cover stress management. Try to do some regular meditation. Exercise, I want all of you to do some kind of cardio exercise where you try to raise your heart rate, which could be simple walking, jogging if you can, or running, or bike, or elliptical. Doing some regular weight training, whatever the safe way you can do it, regular stretches. And I also highly recommend, which I do it myself all the time, is walking after meals. Walking after meals actually handles your sugar better, and you actually have high chance of not developing insulin resistance, pre-diabetes, and diabetes. I definitely want you to avoid keto diet as much as possible. There are no long-term data on keto, and in my opinion, keto diet actually is not a good diet. Low carb diet actually is a bad diet, so avoid low carb diet as much as possible. So again, to sum it up, to reverse the prediabetes, lose weight, keep your BMI below 22. Start with losing small amount of weight. Every pound counts. So even if you lose 5 to 10 pounds, it's going to prevent prediabetes and diabetes. Try to eat less saturated fat in your diet. Try to eat whole food, plant-based diet. And again, remember the mechanism, the removing fat from your cells, including muscle cell, including liver cell, including pancreatic cells, is the way to prevent the prediabetes and diabetes. So try to remove the fat from all the cells. And again, one simple thing, that if you are pre-diabetic and if you are on metformin, check insulin level, which is simple blood test, and if your insulin level is still above 5, I would continue the metformin until you lower your insulin level below 5. So let's see how I did it. I was just like many of you, many of the Americans. 5-7 years ago, I was pre-diabetic. I was not just overweight, I was obese. My BMI was 31. So even as a cardiologist with a lot of education, going through medical school, going through fellowship, having a lot of experience. I myself was a victim of what all of us go through. And my BMI was 31, so I was obese. I changed my lifestyle. My wake up call was developing prediabetes. I lost almost 45 or 50 pounds. My A1C is 5.2 now. I like to make it 4.9. I'm working towards it. I'm off metformin now. And my recent sugar, like I said earlier, just last Monday, 3 days ago, was 81 fasting sugar. So I've reversed my prediabetes. Obviously, picture can speak thousand words. So let's see what you guys think. I hope you can see the whole slide. This slide somehow is half cut off. I'm going to show you the next slide. You can clearly see the picture is about 4 years apart, and I feel great. I enjoy the benefits of having healthy lifestyle. I have my family members follow it. I'm a better husband, better father, better friend, better doctor, and I try to set an example by following my own leads. I try to walk the talk, and I want all of you to be part of this movement. I want all of you to prevent prediabetes, reverse prediabetes, prevent diabetes, live long, live healthy, live happy. And you can clearly see it's not very hard. I continue working as a full-time cardiologist. I 2 hour commute. I still have family. Our kids are grown up, but I still have family. My parents still living. So I have as many obligations as all of you have. Many of you are retired now. Many of you have more time on your hand. I want you to invest your time, your energy, your knowledge, your resources into preventing prediabetes, reversing prediabetes, and preventing type 2 diabetes. I want you to live long, live healthy, lower the cost of medications, lower the many chronic disease, lower the hospitalization. Even some of the risk factors for prediabetes and diabetes are the risk factors for dying from COVID, corona infection. So if you want to prevent complications and prevent death from corona infection, I want you to lose weight. I want you to eat healthy, and I want you to, live long and be happy. Again, very important that we stay healthy, because doctors will do their job. Doctors are trained to prescribe medications, do a lot of procedures, do a lot of surgeries, but doctors are not trained to change the lifestyle. And that's the reason I got certified into lifestyle medicine. But again, changing lifestyle, you all are actually expert. You can learn a lot of things about changing lifestyle, becoming healthy from Google, from YouTube, from watching videos, from seminars like today from AARP. And we're going to have a lot more seminars on diabetes over the next 2 months. I want you to take part into all the seminars, learn more, be informed, be actually as healthy as you can, and enjoy the benefits like I have. I have some resources. This is a very important thing. You should write it down. There's a thing called Mastering Diabetes. There's a book, and there are YouTube videos. There's a Neil Barnard, Dr. Neil Barnard. He has a lot of books, a lot of videos. There's Dr. Joe Furman. He also has a lot of books and a lot of videos. So I want you to watch all of them, be informed, ask me questions, and I'll always be available. I wish you the best. Let's go to question and answer. I really appreciate you joining our seminar today, and I thank AARP of Michigan to have me come on this program and contribute my expertise and my knowledge. Thank you, and I'm available for all the questions. Thank you.
Wow, that was wonderful, Dr. Thank you. So we had a lot of great questions. I just want to cover a couple of things before we get to those. One is, at the beginning, I neglected to say thank you to our partners who are doing these presentations with our health and wellness presentations every month, and that's Peak Performance Physical Therapy. They have been a great partner, and they have worked hard right alongside us to get presenters just like you. So thank you to them. All right, so, and one thing, we had a number of questions, and I want to make sure people understand that they can get the resources. We have under the resource tabs that looks like a couple pieces of paper, vertically, a couple pieces of paper. You can get the resources, including the resources that Dr. Shah mentioned. They are all listed in the resource list also. So let's get to some of the questions. One question is, if your blood sugar is under 100, is there any need for an A1C test?
Yes, because many times fasting sugar could be below 100, but postprandial, that means after taking a meal, sugar can spike up higher. And a lot of people are in this latent state where fasting could be all right, but after eating, sugar can spike. And A1C, the A1C is measured by how your red blood cells looks at the sugar 24 hours throughout the day. So whenever A1C actually is measured, it looks at what happens whole day when you eat, whether you're fasting, whether you're eating. So A1C is a better reflection of your 24-hour sugar control instead of just a fasting. So I would say A1C is very important, as important, if not more important than fasting sugar.
Good to know. All right, so I had a couple questions about if you had a brand of whole grain bread that you recommend that's good for diabetics.
So there is a ECKI bread, any bread which is a whole grain. There are all different brands, but look for whole grain. So when you look for the whole grain, look at the ingredients in the bread, on the bread itself. And if it says whole wheat, that's a right bread. I actually, at our house, we eat sprouted bread. I think I want all of you to gradually phase out bread from the diet and eat more of quinoa, more of oat, like oat groats, more of brown rice. I think we need grain because grain gives us the calories when we are active, but reach out for the grain which are non-flour grains. Bread is fine, but try to go more with oat groats in the morning or quinoa for lunch or brown rice for dinner instead of reaching out the bread itself.
All right. So I know you talked about fat, the percentage of fat being, trying to keep it at 15%, around 15%. But we have a question about which fats are healthy, and like nuts, or what other fats are healthy that they can, what should those fats be that you are eating?
Right. So again, fat is important. We cannot live without fat. All three macro are important: carbohydrate, protein, and fat. Fat should be 15%, and majority of that fat should be poly and monosaturated fat. And we get poly and monosaturated fat from avocado, nuts, and seeds. And out of nuts, walnuts are the best nuts. Almonds are the second best nuts, but walnuts are the best nuts. Seeds, flaxseed, ground flax seeds are the best seeds, but chia seeds. But all nuts and seeds are healthy as long as it's in a small quantity, because nuts and seeds pack a lot of calories per pound. And if you're trying to lose weight, try to limit nuts and seeds no more than 1 to 2 ounces per day. I would say even 1 ounce per day if you're trying to lose weight and trying to get body mass below 22. So I think, in my opinion, fat is important because fat, nuts, seeds, avocado, gives us omega-3, and omega-3 is actually proven now to be very beneficial. So I want you to have a lot of omega-3. So fat is essential, but try to restrict to no more than 15%. Definitely avoid saturated fat, and saturated fat would come from whole fat milk, a lot of animal products, including red meat, including chicken. So try to avoid saturated fat as much as possible. But again, carb is not enemy, fat is not enemy. It's just how much of each you eat.
Okay. So someone asked, you talked about having a lot of fiber and probiotics through things like oatmeal and things in your gut. Someone asked, can Metamucil fiber and probiotic pills help lower blood sugar and A1C and help with prediabetes?
Yes, that's an excellent question. So I think people who take Metamucil, there's some data that it can help. But the best way to go is whole food plant-based. If you get 35 gram or higher fiber from your diet, that's much more healthier and much more beneficial than take metformin. To give you an example, a lot of people will have a lot of animal products. Animal products have zero fiber and they will develop constipation. And typically, they will reach out because of all the marketing. People reach out for Metamucil or many of the other fiber in the pill form. Even many doctors will say that take Metamucil for your constipation. Well, it's a fair call, but that's not the way to treat the constipation or to get more fiber or to improve your microbiome. Get your fiber from whole food, from vegetables, raw and cooked vegetables, and from fruits and intact grains. So Metamucil is good, but better is your diet.
All right,
Same with
one last
probiotic. Same with
yes.
probiotic. Probiotic are not necessary if you eat enough prebiotic. Prebiotic means fiber. If you have enough fiber, particularly beans, beans gives you a lot of soluble fiber. Your gut will automatically develop a good, healthy microbiome. If you think that your microbiome is disturbed because you did not eat whole food plant-based diet for years and years, it's okay to take plant-based yogurt or fermented food or kimchi or that kind of thing to get some bacteria in your diet to get healthy microbiome. But long-term, probiotic are not necessary. I mean, I don't take any probiotic. I am vegan. I eat whole food, plant-based diet, and I'm pretty certain I have very healthy microbiome. So probiotic is again a big marketing hype. You can take it short-term, but long-term probiotic are not necessary.
I'm sorry to everybody for the we don't get to. What does it mean if the glucose, your fasting glucose is 84 or below, but your A is 0?
I think I missed part of it. Please repeat.
Sorry about that. What does it mean if the fasting glucose is 84, but the A1C is 6.0?
Well, again, like I explained before, a lot of people will have post-meal spike in their sugar. And post-meal, when the sugar spikes, that A1C goes higher. So 84 sugar with A1C of 6.0 is pre-diabetes. To give you an example, for myself, I call it continuous glucose monitoring, which many of you have heard about it. It's called CGM, continuous glucose monitoring. And I was wearing that small device, small patch, and my fasting sugar will be in 70s and 80s. And after a certain meal, particularly like white rice, my sugar will spike up to 210. So if I went only by fasting sugar, I would have never known the post meal I was almost in a pre-diabetic or diabetic category. And that's the reason many times fasting sugar can be normal, but A1C will be higher.
All right. Well, we've gone over our time by about 12 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and say that we need to end. But I want to say thank you to you, Dr. Shah, for all of your interest or all of your information. We've had lots of information responses in the chat saying thank you so much for sharing your own story. And you've been very inspiring, and that they have really have a lot to think about and a lot to try to put into practice. So thank you so much.
You.
And
Thank you.
I do want to say that a lot of what Dr. Shah has said today will be talked about a little bit more in depth during the nutrition and diabetes session that we are doing on June 3rd, I believe it is. So this is, if you are watching today, you should stop back in on June 3rd, and you can get kind of a refresher and a little additional information from our friends at the Whole Health Club, who have a health club that is also talks about promotes whole food, plant-based eating to their clients. So thank you again, Dr. Shah, and
Yeah, I think, Karen, again, thank you. I think you've been a great help to set up this thing for us. So we admire you, and I think we value you, and we thank you. I think you've been doing some instrumental work. I also like all our viewers to know that if they want more information, they can look me up under Healthy Living with Dr. Aajay Shah, both on Facebook and YouTube. There are 200-300 videos on YouTube. They can learn from it. But I want all our viewers, not just today, but over next many months and years as they watch this thing again and again, to reach out for more and more information. And I'm always available on my Facebook page to answer their questions after today's session ends. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for joining us.